Got it. Cool. All
Oh,
right. Welcome back to French Press Podcast. Good morning,
yes.
good afternoon, wherever you all are. Thanks for being here. We have a fantastic guest. Took us about, and I'm not even kidding, about an hour to get set up on this podcast. It literally going back and forth, sending Zoom links, Spotify links, you name it, but we are here. So with the wonderful, beautiful Noelle Malpeso, how are you?
Hello, how are you? I know this better be good because we spent so much time trying to do the damn thing, but here we are. Thank you for having me back.
Absolutely. And the funny part about this is there can be no edits. It's a one and done deal right now with Zoom.
I don't know.
So no swearing. No, I'm kidding.
Can't
But
promise
yeah,
that.
so for anyone who's new, Noelle and I met in our master's program at Merrimack College. I was on track for the strength and conditioning, exercise, sports science, and Noelle was more on the dietitian, nutritional path. And so we had Noelle on, I think, the second or third episode, which was great. We had her on with Jake Alexander back in Brighton, Mass. Remember in the bedroom with the one mic and we're all sharing it.
Yes, oh my gosh. Started from there. I mean, our tech issues have not improved because of what we just went through, but yeah, the good old days in Brighton.
Oh my God. Yeah, that was awesome. And you brought what'd you bring? You brought us snacks, but there was like keto bites or whatever they were.
Yes, it was like a keto chocolate, kind of like Reese's cup, I would say, and a keto coffee because we all, it's, French
Yes.
press Friday, and I could not come without coffee or something.
Absolutely. Yeah, no, appreciate it. I think Jake left his treats behind. So you know me, I took them, hid them under the bed, and
Of course.
after a nice night at the bar, they were all gone.
Well, I'm glad I satisfied that craving for you. For
Absolutely.
Jake.
Yeah.
I have to get him another one next time I see him.
It's all right. Have you seen Jake?
I have not. No, but I know he's in
No.
med school, so I know he's probably super busy.
He is, yeah, and that's the reason why I took this over is because scheduling wise,
Mm,
let alone being, you know, a 3 hour discrepancy between our schedules.
That's
He's
true.
ending work, coming home, I'm just finishing. So I was like, dude, I'll just take it over, but we'll have him on for sure. He just finished a half marathon. I don't know if you saw in Nashville,
Yes, so cool. You guys
which
are
was
like
dope.
big into running, which is awesome.
Trying.
The Boston Marathon was just recently, so that was pretty inspiring to see everyone, but I do not think I can do a marathon.
Not yet. It's all good.
No,
Not yet.
not my
But
thing.
it's all right. Well, what are you doing right now to stay active? Are you still working out? What's your thing right now? I'm
Well, I
curious.
have my Peloton. I don't
Okay.
think I had it when we did our first like recording. I think I got it like mid-February. So have my handy dandy Peloton, which is nice because they have, like 30-minute rides, which are always the hardest. Like the shorter rides are usually like the ones that are killer, which is nice because during my lunch break can just like hop on real quick in between, my member sessions. Going to the gym. I actually still go to the gym that I think you introduced me to it. Gym it in Brookline.
Oh yeah. Yep.
Like, because that was like the only gym open kind of when pandemic was still like high and whatnot.
Yeah.
So that's been good. And then just it's been getting nicer out. So I mean, I'm so jealous that you're in Arizona. You always have like the sun and the warmth, but just going for some nice walks, shooting some hoops. That's like my active recovery. So I've been getting out there a lot lately. But yeah, just usual. I have a gym in my apartment. So I always
Nice.
my not idea, but my like philosophy, I guess, of movement is just to get it done. Like if you have 20 minutes, then 20 minutes is better than nothing. So you can, be productive. I think you have this like, well, most people I think have this like notion of, okay, I need to spend like an hour and a half in the gym and like, that constitutes a great workout. Meanwhile, you can go on for like 20 minutes, sweat, feel good. And I think that's just as efficient as, being in the gym for like an hour and a half.
I agree, and it's so funny you brought that up because I was on a new like client call, and I
Mm,
was just letting her know like what Kenary Performance is all about, all this type of stuff. And I told her, you know, perspective is reality. Like the way we perceive the world is what we think is true.
Mhm.
And so if we can change the way we look at food, right? So nutrition as fuel, fueling the body,
Mhm.
and then exercise as movement, I think it's a lot healthier relationship. And she was like, "Oh my God, I never thought about that way," because she was on like a hike out in the West Coast or something like that. And she went for like a 6 mile hike. And she's like, "Oh, damn, I still have to exercise today." I'm like, "You just went on a 6 mile hike." Like, you
Yeah.
know, so it's stuff like that. And I see you posting your basketball in Southie at the hoops. And I'm like,
I love it. So yeah, it's so nice. It's so like therapeutic for me. It was part of my life for so long. And then, I think we need to make more time for play too, like when it comes to movement. And that's a lot of things I have been like emphasizing with my clients. And it's, like they kind of they not kind of they do inspire me. Like, throughout our sessions, we go over different, emotional health, exercise, and food and nutrition. And it's like, they have a goal of like movement. And so it's like, okay, if my members and clients are doing it, then I should be doing it too. Like I'm no different. And so, yeah, just speaking it more with them, it helps me. But I think we need to make more time for some play too. I think it's like something we like kind of let go of because we're adults, we're working, and we don't really tap into that as much. But it's so fun. And then like my friends who never play basketball got involved and they had a great time. And then I don't know, it's just something different. And you're still moving, I still work up a sweat.
right.
So yeah,
No,
feels
and
something.
you you brought up another good point too. On the call of us trying to get this set up for an hour, you're just shooting the shit. And so I told you, Billy and I, when I went back to Boston for Easter, we went out, had a Dan day,
And
uh, grabbed some wine up in Italy. It was like this beautiful floral like wine spot. We tried a ton of different things, right up Dan's alley. Cause like
was it
I'm
Tara? Is that where you guys went? Was it called?
probably,
It's like
uh,
outside, like gardeny.
yep,
Okay.
fantastic. Great date spot. But I had my date with Billy, which is awesome. But we were sitting down at the bar, talking. There was this woman next to us. She was checking out. And then I don't know how the conversation started, but she is ahead of like the public schools in Massachusetts for like I don't want to say like cafeteria, but like those lunches and just nutrition for public schools. And we were just talking, and she brought up a really good point. She's like, when I have these discussions with teachers, or I'm down in Washington, lobbying for better food for the kids and stuff, we're having more time for math, science, social studies, and they're cutting down on the time in physical education. And it's funny because, some of these teachers that she was saying, this is not my words, say these kids can't sit in class. And like all these kids are getting on different pills for anxiety and all this stuff. Everyone has their reason, but like if these kids who have the highest amount of energy they'll ever have in their life aren't burning it off, then like what are we doing?
Yeah, and they're
Right?
kids, and like you made, well, I guess she made the point where they're getting put on like ADHD medication, where it's like, no, they're kids. They just need to let this energy out. They don't have, a attention deficit disorder. They're just kids. They need fresh air. They need movement, and we're, so true.
So anyways, that's my rant. I did want to share with you because you and I enjoy our wine, right?
Yes.
So I reached out to a couple, this is gonna sound kind of funny, but like different alcoholic companies.
Mhm.
So like different tequila and wine companies. And I was like, hey, Kenary, health professional for the past 8, 10 years, and working with my clients, I never like to take food away or alcohol away. It's really just how do we balance that fun stuff, but also stick to our health goals. And that's all about taking a look at the calories in and out, and balancing that. Because if you think about it, and as you know, to stay sustainable, and you enjoy a nice cocktail or wine or whatever, that's not going to go away ever. So how do we just deal with it now and figure those strategic plans to enjoy those moments without any remorse, right?
You are preaching to the choir.
Yeah, I mean, I do it every week, so I think I got the math down. But so anyways, I emailed a couple like wine companies and tequila companies, and so Fitvine got back to me. They're like, we'd love to send you some wine.
Oh my
So
God.
I got a call with them next week. I'm trying to get like a promotional code for the podcast potentially,
That would be
as
amazing.
as well as this other organic tequila called Hermosa. I don't
Huh.
know if you've ever heard of it,
It
but
sounds familiar, but I love tequila. So
yeah, so I was like, I'll take it, But
we'll take whatever we can get. Just kidding.
right, because everyone wants all these trainers want to get sponsored by, a supplement or clothes. And I'm like, no, give me like
Give
the
me the good
the more
stuff.
yeah, like let's just cut to the chase. So anyways, yeah, so that's what's going on next week. So I'm excited for that. And I will send everyone some wine if it works out. But it's just a conversation. I don't even know if it's gonna actually happen.
But good for you for just putting it out there. You never know. The answer is always no unless you ask. So,
Right.
good for you for just reaching out. And it's so on brands, I feel like. And you're so right like about it being sustainable. I always like emphasize that too. Like if I'm gonna have a cocktail, a glass of wine, like I want to make sure it's, good quality ingredients too. It's
Right.
gonna enjoy it, or that's how I try to approach everything. Of course, you have that balance. There's things like out of our control, but if it's something that's like a regular thing, or if you can control it, like at least make it healthy as much as possible, or have good quality ingredients. So I can't wait to hear about it. You have to definitely let me know
Hope so.
the good news when you get, when you chat with them. But
Well, we will see, but you will be one
fingers
of the first
crossed.
to know, 100%.
We'll have to do
But
like a taste test when we can do it virtually, or if you're back in Boston, we can do like a cocktail with
cocktail
cocktail
with
recipe.
Kenary.
Wait a second. Were you thinking of that, or did I
No,
just
I just thought of it.
I kind of want to take credit for some of that because I
No,
can't.
you can make the cocktails. I'll
Okay.
call it cocktails with Kenary, and then I'll bring in like guests such as yourself, and then we'll make those organic. I remember you made those spicy cocktails with the tequila and the peppers, and
Oh
those are
yes, yes.
this is like
Don't
a potion.
don't go telling my secrets yet.
Yeah,
Wait,
yeah.
it's so funny you mentioned that, because I feel like I was just thinking, like I wish I had a creative enough name to have like a cocktail like thing, but like cocktails, I mean, cocktails with Canary, kind of that's your thing now. Like that's
The
we
only
gotta
thing
roll
I
with that.
the only thing I could think of that just popped in my head was Negronis with Noel. But I don't know if
That's
that
actually not
sticks.
bad, because that's kind of my favorite drink. Like I love a tequila with grapefruit, and that's basically what that
Okay.
is. So, huh. All
All
right.
right.
I
Just
see
saying.
it. I see an Instagram post coming up with that. So I need to like write it down and remember.
Yes. Yes. But all right. Let's cut to it. So last time we had you on, it was just all about nutrition and at a very high level, very general. And then it kind of was getting tailored towards the women's side of things, which is actually really cool and interesting with a lot of things that I didn't even know. But today we want to just touch upon gut health, make it very consumable for the listeners to understand, and what the heck is gut health and why is it important and how does it affect us? What the heck is leaky gut? I don't even really know what leaky gut is. It sounds like a bad fart, but
It could probably lead to that, that's for sure.
yes. So I guess my first question is, why gut health? Like why, when I reached out to you, why was like that the first thing you want to hit on?
Yeah, I think because I can just speak the most of it. It's really near and dear to my heart, as
Yep.
probably everything is, because I've experienced it myself. It's what I was first exposed to working in the field when I was still an undergrad. And I just see so many people with gut issues that they don't even realize they have gut issues. They think a lot of it is normal. And, it's just gut issues, or just the gut is really the root of all health, especially when COVID kind of hit. I think we were all focused. We weren't really focused on where to treat the root cause of a lot of things, not to say, it was COVID specifically, but your immunity starts in your gut. So that's like the first and foremost thing. And that's what like really pushed me to start digging deeper into gut health and just like making it more aware and have people more aware that like we need to take care of our gut health first, because one, that's where immunity resides. There's a thing called the gut brain connection. So has a lot to do with mental health as well, which I think is really important and a big thing I feel like we're seeing a lot now that a lot of people are speaking up about who deal with mental health issues. But just from my own personal experience, like I had mentioned when I was an undergrad and working for, you know, a dietitian, a lot of anxiety, depression, it all, once we start like treating the gut, a lot of those symptoms start to diminish. So it's not to say, of course, those exist on a different level, but we all have to kind of go back to, you know, what is creating this, you know, imbalance in ourselves.
Gotcha. So is it bad food? Is it not moving? Is it, you know, smoking? Like what makes a bad gut?
Yeah. Well, that's a lot of things. You know, environments, pollution, pesticides from the foods we do eat, unfortunately. You know, from birth, you know, a lot of people can have kind of, I don't want to say set yourself up for failure, because obviously we all go through different, you know, birthing things. But you know,
Yeah.
if you were born, you know, not through C-section, like through vaginal, if you were breastfed, you have a more antibodies that is really good for your gut and gut health development. But unfortunately, not everyone has that, like myself included. That's not how I was born. And that's okay. But there's things that we can do to kind of build that immunity back up in our gut. But
Gotcha.
also, you know, just I think really the integrity of our food a lot too, that can cause, you know, what you had mentioned before, leaky gut. So it just like kind of ruins the integrity and ruins the membranes. And that's when we can kind of start to see some issues come about.
And so, because I noticed it too, you know, I eat pretty healthy, and then on the weekend, you know, it,
Mhm.
I'll have a couple different things, but it is really funny because my mental state will be like a complete 180, like an
Mhm.
hour after eating whatever I eat that's not good on like the weekend. And it it's kind of fascinating because I think that's what's always happened to people, but they never kind of figured out why. Do you know when people started talking about gut health and figuring out, oh, damn, like your gut does affect how your mental state works, I guess?
I mean, I
When
don't know exactly
right.
when, but when I first personally learned about it was, oh my gosh, I feel like we're so old now. And I like think back when we were in undergrad, it
Yeah.
had to be like probably 2015 of when I was hearing about it. So I'm sure there are plenty of studies like way before 2015, but that's when I first started to see the gut brain connection. And you know, when you're like really nervous or you just heard bad news, you get that like pit in your stomach, or like your stomach
Yeah.
feels like it just dropped 20 feet to the ground like that. You know, it has something to do with it. And it goes with saying, you know, when you're constantly stressed, and a lot of people might experience some digestive issues when they're really stressed or just got bad news, you get cramped up. So that's where it all kind of again connects.
Gotcha. And I love going to the grocery store, like Whole Foods, as you know,
Love
is
Hope.
like church.
It
It's like my religion.
really is.
Uh, but going through there, I love just seeing like what they have and stuff. And I always see kombucha,
Oh, okay.
right? So is that, and if you don't know, then you don't know, but like, what is the purpose of kombucha? And is it really like, is it worth the dollars, I guess? Like, is it a real thing or is it just like a marketing?
Yeah, that's a really good question. Is it worth the dollars? Um, is it worth the dollars? I would say no. So what kombucha is, it's like fermented. I don't know exactly, like it's fermented basically, and it does have probiotics in it through that like fermentation process. But what I don't love about kombucha is that there can be a lot of added sugar in
Ah,
kombucha. If you see like the flavors. So if you enjoy it, then yeah, you know, and it doesn't bother you, have at it. But if you're experiencing some like digestive issues, or if you honestly, it's an acquired taste. I wouldn't say it's like people's probably like I don't know, depending on your taste preference, but you know, it's not everyone's, I think, first like go to. But yeah, I wouldn't, it depends. It's a slippery slope. If you enjoy it, then enjoy it. But if you are experiencing some like GI distress, and just be careful of like the added sugars, because then that can kind of create a whole slew of, you know,
Other things.
concoction, I would say. Yeah.
Yeah, because from my understanding, sugar's like the basis, the foundation for most disease. I know that cancer cells thrive off sugar, glucose. So especially when people do have cancer, they go on a keto diet because they're not taking in any type of really easy to digest sugar.
Mhm.
Um, so I understand that too. Uh, with the added sugar too, is that something you bring up with your clients, to just switch gears for a second? Because I will get asked nutrition questions on nutrition labels. Like, how's the fat, Dan? How's the protein, carbs? And I go, actually, look at the added sugar. Like,
Mhm.
what are they actually adding to this? Do you
Yes.
bring that up, or do people even realize that when you speak to them?
Not a lot of people, it's funny, a lot of people like don't, you know, sometimes have to go back to basics in terms of like macronutrients. Like sometimes
Yeah.
clients don't know exactly what a fat is or what makes up a fat, but added sugars are the number one thing. I definitely, when it comes to label reading, I'm always emphasizing just look at the amount of added sugars, because that's, you know, that's when it creeps in, of just unnecessary. It's just unnecessary sometimes too. So just gotta be careful with that.
Yeah, I agree. And especially when, and you've probably gotten asked this, what's the best salad dressing? And I'm like, any ones that don't have added sugar is probably fine.
Mhm.
Uh, so that's another big thing, especially just for the people listening in. If you've never even thought to look at the added sugar piece of the nutrition label, start looking, because you'll find some salad dressings or just whatever you like for food.
Mhm.
There are some products out there that you eat on a daily basis that could potentially have more sugar than like a can of Coke,
Yeah.
which is insane.
And another little tidbit, I would say when it comes to label reading, if you look at the ingredients, whatever is labeled first is what is the most, that doesn't make sense.
Prevalent.
It's like the most, how do I word this correctly? The first ingredients, it's listed from most ingredient in that product to the least. So if the first thing is like high fructose corn syrup or like cane sugar, then it's like, okay, that probably has a lot of sugar in it.
A lot of crap in it. I think the rule of thumb, correct me if I'm wrong, is like 5 ingredients or less is usually pretty good.
Yeah, I always say 5 or less is best. 10 or more, you want to be a little like, I say 10 or more is war. Like obviously war is
Yeah.
good, but it helps people kind of remember those like numbers. But and also just if you can't pronounce it, probably not something you want to have. So that's
Right.
another thing I would say.
So we'll come back to the gut now, right? So Noelle, this is great. This is awesome. I've been having weird like stomach issues. I don't know if it's me or the food I'm eating or I'm born with this. Like, what are some symptoms that are easily applied to the gut? And then what are some like symptoms that are kind of hidden
Yeah,
for
that's
the for the gut?
good question. So I think first and foremost is when people experience bloat. That's bloating is not unpopular opinion. Bloating is not normal, even after you eat. Of course, if you're having maybe like a Thanksgiving dinner and you're having a lot more than usual, but you should not feel bloated after a meal. You know, again, depending if you did eat more than you normally would have, then yes. But if you're eating a standard normal regular meal as you would and you constantly feel bloated, then that's a telltale sign. um, I would say if your bowels are off,
Like
another
poop
sign.
schedule?
Yes, yeah, yeah, if
We can
you're
say
not
poop.
poop 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 poop. We're all adults here. No, but yeah, if you're not going every single day, that's another, you know, if you're constipated, oh boy, like you do not want to be, when people tell me they haven't gone in like 3 days, I want to be like, ugh. Like we got to get you going, moving and grooving. um some hidden signs might be acne. um so you know,
Interesting.
yeah, so acne could be due to like gut dysbiosis, which is like an imbalance of your microbes. Another hidden sign, I would say like blood sugar imbalances too. Because that kind of ties into like, this is a little bit deeper, maybe another time, another day, but it goes into, you know, what's called like in Chinese medicine, like dampness. So,
Okay.
if you're, if your blood sugar's off, you might not feel satisfied after a meal and like feel like you need to eat something again right after. Or you can be having a lot of like if you're eating enough carbs but still gravitating and craving carbohydrates, then that might be another thing. Your blood sugar might be off. It's one thing if you're like not eating enough carbs and having that craving, but if you are eating a substantial amount, like a normal amount, but you still feel like I'm not full after meals, or constantly craving sweets or something, that could be another sign of you know
Interesting.
gut
Any
issues.
anything with like your hair?
um
Nothing.
I mean, I think it all will just tie back into kind of like, if you're just stagnant, like, so if your digestive system is stagnant, nutrients aren't getting to where they need to go. So yeah, that could contribute to maybe hair. You're not absorbing your nutrients. So that's again, when it, like the term you mentioned earlier, leaky gut. If you're, if again, and also with blood sugar, if the nutrients aren't going to where they need to go, they're going to end up in places where they're not supposed to be. And that's, how leaky gut starts forming, and where these issues start to have like a domino effect.
Gotcha. And I don't know if you touched upon it. I mean, we talked about leaky gut, but like, what exactly is leaky gut?
So leaky gut is when I I don't know if people are gonna be able to see me if we're gonna post this, but basically your gut junctions and the membranes should be like solid. They should be like that. But leaky gut is when they start to kind of like separate. And that's when it starts separating, that's when things like I mentioned that are supposed to go elsewhere start going into these membranes that they're not supposed to be in. So that can lead to undigested food. And
Mm,
just, that's where like food intolerance, I feel like stems from a lot, is just because they're undigested and they're in places where they shouldn't be, where they should be going, to your cells and to your blood and whatnot.
interesting. So you answered my like lifelong question of what the heck is leaky gut? Because my mind goes in a million different ways with that, but that makes sense.
Right.
So is there like a test I can take to?
Um, yeah, I mean, there's a few different tests. Like I think a stool test might be helpful in determining a lot of gut issues. You can take a GI, another like form of like a stool test is like a GI map, which is kind of like a similar thing. It will, assess your bowels basically. And it can kind of see what other enzymes or, things that you might be missing that are really important for gut health. Like it's called like butyrate is a really important thing to make sure you're making. And if you're not making enough of it, and that's can be a telltale sign of some gut issues going on.
Wait, so you said, did you have any gut issues? Did you say that?
Oh yeah, I've had definitely major
Can
gut
you touch upon that? I don't want, like, if you don't
issues.
feel comfortable.
No, it's totally fine. So yeah, I actually it had to be probably in like 2016, maybe. I took a GI, a stool test. And I remember the dietitian I was working for, she was like, girl, you are like effed up. Like I was missing like digestive enzymes. Um, you can also see what antibiotics you're resistant to through stool tests. I had a lot of food allergies. As you might have known, when we first ever met, I was really like gluten and eggs were like my one things I could not have for a while. So I was having a lot of food intolerances, bloating, acne. I had really bad skin for a few years. I didn't really start getting better until I'd say like within the last year, little over a year. So I can contribute all that. I feel like all roads lead to the gut.
Were you crazy active when you were at your worst in terms of just talking about your gut? Were you active? Were you not eating correctly? And when I say were you not eating correctly, I mean like, was there not a large variety of foods you were eating? Like, what did that look like?
Yeah, well, I mean, I feel like it kind of just stems from when I was younger. Like when I was a kid and a little bit in like my early teens, I ate like garbage. I ate fast food, artificial foods. Like I was just talking about it the other day. Like my breakfast in high school was a Pop Tart and a blue Gatorade. Like
Oh,
that was my breakfast. My lunch like would be like a bacon, egg, and cheese on a roll. I'd get Burger King after school or pizza or Chinese food. Like I just did not eat well. Like I would have fruit roll-ups and like it's just anything you can think of. Like I just didn't, I had a lot of artificial stuff and not a lot of like
Yeah.
solid nutrients and a lot of sugar, as you can tell. So I think, you know, little by little, my gut kind of just started to leak, as you would, you know, like as I mentioned, and just not get enough of that good bacteria that I needed. So it wasn't diverse for a while. And then I kind of was again continuing to eat like a lot of artificial stuff, you know, in terms of like artificial sugars. And then I think it was just like a domino and build up of, you know, my kind of collapse, I would say, of just not having the right things. I kind of, and was I active? My symptoms all kind of came at like once. So I was pretty
Gotcha.
active. I was really into like bodybuilding and like lifting, and I played sports my whole life, basketball, softball, dance. Um, so I was pretty active, but then when my gut issues started, a lot of other, you know, that's when the food intolerance started. And that's when like I was feeling really fatigued and I honestly couldn't like work out as much as I used to. So
Damn.
it all happened at once. It was like kind of like a tornado of events, but I was pretty active. Yeah.
It's like a compounding effect. I think,
Mhm.
when we're young, like we can take down that food, but eventually, yes, like we do hit a wall. I mean,
Mhm.
I know people from like middle school, even elementary school, who were considered like the skinny fit. Like,
Mhm.
you're so young.
Yeah.
The kids have like six packs and they're only 120 pounds anyways. And you're like, oh, he's got abs. But some of those people that I know now, they're not fat, but they definitely aren't cut up like the way they used to be. And those specific people are the ones who had always been eating McDonald's, the Burger Kings, and it does catch up to you. And I think it's so interesting to me how our bodies as kids can deal with it.
Mhm.
And then like once puberty starts hitting and hormones start kicking in, like just stops.
Yeah, it's so true. I was like, that's so funny that we're even talking because I literally was just having this combo. I was like, when did it like switch and happen for me? Because I was like that, I was like skinny fat. Like I was, and I was like, how was I so skinny when I was a kid in like teenage years and like eating whatever and anything I wanted? And like now I definitely have to, you know, be careful and watch what I eat. But then you're right, it has like a whole hormonal component. And then what I mentioned before, like I wasn't eating diverse enough. So my microbiome just wasn't diverse. I was not having a lot of the good bacteria that I needed. And I was probably just increasing more of the bad. And when we talked about sugar earlier, you know, those microbes feed onto sugar. That's how some gut issues like candida come about. That's another, you know, popular gut, I would say, issue a lot of people suffer from. But yeah, it just feeds on the sugar. But again, there's other things, there's more to it than just like feeding on a sugar. There's also like parasites that get involved, and that might be it. That's
Really?
a big contributor to a lot of gut health too. And you know, you don't have to go to like, you know, drink bad water and or whatever to like get a parasite. They're everywhere. Not to scare you guys or anything like that, but you know, that's just another underlying root cause. I think, you know, sometimes we get caught up in like, oh, it's like the sugar, which it is the sugar, but then there's something else that's like feeding into that sugar and like replicating that's causing all of this like dysbiosis and like kind of domino effect of symptoms.
Right. And we talked about a couple different like terms. So microbiome, just for the people who don't know, is I want to put in like simpler terms and correct me if I'm wrong, but microbiome being, the little germs in the stomach that keep the stomach strong,
Yes.
therefore keeping the body strong. And so that's where you hear prebiotics, probiotics,
Mhm.
those two things, the pro and prebiotics, ensure that army of what was I saying? The
Like,
microbiome in your
yeah.
stomach stays strong. Is
Yes.
that an accurate statement?
Yeah, that definitely is, but you do have good and bad. You can have
Okay,
good
tell
microbes,
me.
you can have bad microbes. So, you know, when we have an overflow of something like the bad microbes, that's when we see some issues. But even sometimes an overgrowth of like good microbiomes like lactobacillus. I actually had just made a post on this regarding histamine. If we have an overgrowth of lactobacillus, which is a good um bacteria, but if it's too much, then we kind of need, some issues can arise from that. So we need to have like a balance. You want to just make sure you're always in like a balance. You have antibiotics. So antibiotics, when you need to take them, unfortunately, fortunately they'll kill the bad bacteria that's invading or causing, whatever issue may be. But then double-edged sword, it's also killing the good bacteria. So you need to, kind of build that back up.
And that's like antibiotics, like you said, or even for people who aren't on medication, like an Advil or a Tylenol.
Yeah, those can kind of mess up, the gut diversity.
Gotcha. So let's say, this is awesome. I feel like I could be doing a little bit better to ensure that my gut health is good. I eat somewhat healthy. What are kind of your top 2 foods to ensure that, our gut's healthy, would you say?
Top 2 foods. Well, first I would say fiber. You definitely want to have an abundance of that. I mean, not too much where you're feeling constipated. You want to have a good balance of insoluble and soluble fiber, but definitely I would say fiber, because again, it does increase that diversity and it's what your good bacteria feed on. And then the second one, that's a good question.
I'll give you an idea of mine that I would think, but I
Okay.
could be totally wrong.
Yeah.
I think kale is an obvious one.
Mhm.
I feel like kale is an obvious one. You know me, I'm a huge into my eggs. Isn't the egg yolk one of the most like nutrient dense foods in like the world?
It's definitely very nutrient dense. But so if you want to increase your, I would say, I guess another food I would say is butyrate, that word I mentioned, butyrate. If you want to cook your eggs in like ghee, do you know what ghee is?
It's like a fat or a butter, right?
Yes. So it's basically clarified butter. And it lasts like forever. Not forever, but you can use it for a long time. But it has what's called butyrate, which is a short chain fatty acid. It's produced again by like the microbe through fermentation, in dietary fibers. So I would maybe cook your eggs in some ghee if you want to increase, your
Gotcha.
some kale, maybe like a kale omelet. That would be good.
All right. And it's spelled Ghee,
Yeah.
correct?
Mm-hmm.
Ghee. Okay. Do you
Yeah.
know where it comes from? I'm curious. Any idea?
Um, where does ghee? I can look it up real quick.
Yeah, look it
I
up.
feel like ghee.
I wish this was like Joe Rogan podcast where I was like, Jamie.
Soon you'll get there and you will
Yeah.
have ghee. It does come from, it's cow milk butter, but so ghee is a variation of clarified butter, um, made from cow milk butter, treated with low heat until the water evaporates, leaving behind milk solids. So it doesn't have lactose in it. So if you are like lactose intolerant, you can probably,
Dang.
have it. But
Okay.
yeah, but I've had to avoid dairy for so long. I had to avoid eggs for a while, and I actually just started to incorporate eggs back in. I've been using ghee, and I've been feeling really good. So I think I just have to contribute that to just really working on my gut health like intensely for the last, I would say, year. Just doing different things with it, and I've been having gluten here and there. Mostly like I'm not too comfortable to have it like every single day, but like if I'm going to an Italian restaurant, they make like handmade pasta, like I'm like, okay, I think I'll do well with it. So
Well,
so
the North End.
the North, and there actually is a new one that just opened up next to me, which is so good.
An Italian spot?
Mhm.
Okay.
Yeah, opened I think in October. You would
Interesting.
like it actually, yeah, it's a cool vibe, right in Southie.
I will be coming through.
Yeah.
100%.
Of
So
course, the North End, chef's
just as
kiss.
long as there's wine, all right? That's all I need. That and a nice charcuterie board.
Oh.
But so I had two more questions for you. So hormones, right?
Mhm.
What do hormones play a role in the gut?
Yeah, I think it goes back to that whole blood sugar regulation again. When our blood sugar is off, that can start leading into, hormonal issues, androgens. That's like, more hormones forming for a woman, especially. I wouldn't say, I guess men can be affected, but this is more so in terms of like women's
Yeah.
health. You really, especially if you have like PCOS, or any, other hormonal issues going on, you definitely want to keep that blood sugar regulated. A lot of people who are on birth control, unfortunately, that does also mess up the diversity of your gut, and the microbiome. So, I would say to that, just making sure you have a good quality probiotic. But yeah, I think again, in terms of hormones, blood sugar, and then again with that dampness I mentioned, you know,
Right. Yes. The Western, what was it? The Western medicine, Eastern medicine?
Chinese medicine.
Chinese.
Yeah.
Okay, I got you. So the last question I had, I was interested in, I just thought of it. So I know that there is some hype around the carnivore diet,
Mm,
and some people just take that on who do have gut health issues. And from my understanding, the carnivore diet is almost like an elimination diet, meaning if we can eliminate most of our foods and focus on animal protein for the
mhm,
most part. So for people listening, like any type of seafood, eggs, I believe you can have milk, all different types of meat, pork, chicken, steak, burgers, ground beef, you name it.
mhm,
So when we're eating all those, we're not taking in vegetables or fruit. There are some fruit you can eat on it. But from there, once you sustain that carnivore diet and you kind of get your gut back in health, you slowly add in the food you want. And when you do that, you can kind of understand, okay, I've been doing carnivore for, let's just say, 2 months. I haven't had tomatoes in 2 months. I'm going to add them in,
mhm.
see how my body reacts to it. And if it doesn't react well, then I know maybe potentially tomatoes aren't my thing. Is that like an accurate statement?
What do you mean by accurate? Like meaning like
Like,
when you add it in and it doesn't work well, it's like, okay, I probably have an intolerance to it.
is that like a method that you've
Um,
heard of?
Yeah, I definitely heard of like an elimination diet. That for sure can be helpful. But again, you want to be able to enjoy, if you like tomatoes and you want to be able to eat them without having a reaction, then like maybe like we have to look at the root cause of why you are reacting to that certain food. It might be maybe you have an allergy to it. But I think, if maybe there's especially when taking things out for so long and then reintroducing them, and your body, again, if your gut, if you have a little bit of a leaky gut going on and things are getting in places where they're not supposed to, it's gonna like an immune response is gonna happen. So you will get, maybe a reaction to it because, it's just not going to where it needs to go. It's not being digested fully. So I think in terms of elimination diets, they can be useful. But again, I think you just want to treat the root cause of why you're reacting in the first place, because you want to be able to. I mean, for me, I would want to be able to eat, a tomato or
Anything.
everything, because I don't want to live a life of being like, you know, I can't have this, I can't have that. And I have lived that for a while, and it sucked and it was annoying. And, a lot of anxiety comes about like when you go out to eat and, it's like, oh, I have to avoid this. And you just get like, intense about it. And so I would just focus on like getting to the root cause of why certain things aren't meshing well before going to a complete like elimination diet.
I agree. I think
And
that's
it's
just,
like,
yeah.
right, go ahead.
No, I was gonna say, I think it's too cold turkey
Yeah.
almost for
Yeah.
people. Um, and the faster you do that, I think the faster you come back to eating the way you were. I
Mhm.
think truly, if you can take some away from today, it's really whatever you're putting into your body is what you're gonna get out of it. At
Yeah.
the end of the day, we know that it's not bad to have tasty food. It's not bad to have alcohol. It's just only an issue when there's an overconsumption
Mhm.
of those things. And as long as we're moving well, eating right, I think it's so funny, especially for you too. You'll understand this. Everyone knows what to eat,
Mhm.
but it's like dealing with these habits that we've had for 30, 40, 50 years of eating the same way. It's a habit breaking type of methodology that we're trying to help people with. Because if you ask anyone what to eat, they all know.
Yeah.
It's just how do we
Yeah.
psychologically help them do that? So yeah, it's just I find nutrition like fascinating because everyone's body's different. Everyone reacts different. People can do vegan and they feel great. Carnivore do great. Keto, sure. I just I think it's a topic that'll never be an answer to.
Yeah.
But it takes time. It takes practice to figure out what works for you. But once you do, that investment of time for a couple of years to figure out what works, what doesn't, will last you the lifetime, right?
So
So,
true. Yeah. And you touched on that in that article you just put out or interviewed for, like,
oh yeah,
so
yeah,
much
yeah.
information online, and like, I'm sorry, excuse me, like it gets like overwhelming, and I get it. Like if we weren't in this field and didn't study it, like sometimes I too even get overwhelmed. I'm like, what is it that we should be doing? But then at the end of the day, it really is just like back to basics, back to whole foods. Like that's just what, if you look at each diet, that's literally at the end of it all, that's what they all just come down to, is just having whole non-processed foods as like the
Boom.
core of everything. And like you mentioned, like habit breaking, I find that there's a lot of attachment to food also, and just a lot of attachment to these habits that, like, we're not willing to break because we're just uncomfortable with the feeling of like, well, I don't know how it is to like be without something or whatnot. So it's a lot of like attachment that we have towards food, and just like those daily habits that we don't realize, but like once we kind of are a little more self-aware of it, we're like, oh wow, like, a lot of my clients, like getting them off Diet Coke, like they feel like they need to have this Diet Coke every single day, and then we go 2 weeks out, I'm like, I don't need this. Like your taste buds change, and everything really starts to change. Your microbiome starts to change too, so it feels like, does affect what you crave too. If you're constantly eating fast food or processed foods, it's because that's what you're like, you kind of set yourself up to want and need. But once you kind of go into this whole like whole foods, non-processed, that's what your body starts to want and feed off of, really.
Yeah, I agree. Our body's so good at adapting. That's why we're here. That's why we're top dog in the world in terms of at least being on the land. But it's true. Like, what we put our body through, it will adapt. If we start running 10 miles a day, we're just gonna get better at it. If we start eating like shit, we're just naturally gonna start feeling like shit. Like our
Exactly.
we could have like another whole conversation on this, and it
I
would
know.
probably get crazy motivational, but I'm not gonna go there.
Another time, I know, I feel like because we haven't seen each other and like
I know.
had it in a while, it's like, I don't know, we just can keep going and going. Did you freeze on me?
You there?
I'm Hi, I don't know what happens, but I hope that all saved, because that was a good one.
I think it did. So it'll like send you a link and
Okay,
stuff,
yeah.
and I'm sure I can edit it somehow. So don't worry about it. We're still recording.
I'm still here.
Um, so you'll just send me two. But anyways, um, do you have anything that you just want to let the listeners know, like one small thing that they can do? Just one final piece.
Yeah, so I would say in terms of like gut health, to do eat fiber, have a diverse, I think it can be fun too if you want to like kind of challenge yourself, or making a little experiment when you go grocery shopping next time. Try an ingredient that you normally don't get or don't have often, and kind of do that each. Or if you go to the farmer's market, or if you go, like I said, grocery shopping, just choose one vegetable, one fruit that you don't normally have, and get creative. Throw that into one of your meals, to increase that diversity. I would say get a good probiotic. That's always my number one thing, is a good probiotic spore base, because you want to make sure it survives the integrity of the stomach. And then we touched on it earlier in regards to movement, but make time for enjoyable movement, make time for play, make time for fun, because we know, like I mentioned, like the gut brain, when we're constantly stressed or in this like fight or flight mode, it's going to impair our digestion. So just make time for fun and excitement.
I like it. I like it. Well, I nailed you with questions. Do you have any questions for me? Or are you good?
Questions for you. Oh my God, I feel like I have a ton. Just there's so many. But what is something, I guess, that you do for your gut health, since we're on the topic?
Oh, good question. You know, what's funny? I don't think about my gut health too much, and it's not because I don't care. It's just something I just don't think of. I think I'm more focused on performance, performance, performance. Like I'm always working out, especially for the Ironman stuff. Um, but I did ask about kombucha because I do see it a lot, and like I won't buy it because I don't know if it's like a hype thing. But uh, in terms of my gut health, what do I do? I would say the omelets that I make in the morning always have a million different vegetables in them.
Yeah,
That's what I would say.
some fire omelets.
Fire omelets. So that's what I do.
That's
But yeah, so other than that, where can people find you? DM you for questions, comments. You tell us where can they get you?
Yeah, I am on Instagram. It's nutritionally Noelle. And I am taking, I had four client spots open, but now I'm down to two. So if you are interested in working, want to get your gut health fixed, two spots open. So claim it, it's yours.
Cool. And I will put all your links in the chat bio thing, whatever it is. Show notes. There we go. I'm sorry. But
It's been an evening. I'm just happy we were able to get together, do it. And it's always a pleasure chatting with you. So thanks for having me on again.
absolutely. All right, Noel.
Right.
Deuces.
See ya.
And then you can just hit end recording, I think.
All right.
I'll take